Hello, welcome to Clarity Design. Another marvellous day, and we're looking at Photoshop CS 5.5, and today I'm using a new microphone, which means you might be able to hear me, which is awesome. We're going to take you through some of the basic layout functions that we've got on Photoshop CS 5.5, and then we will be looking at the text tool and how to add filters and effects. So some real basic stuff today, just to get us going and get us enjoying what we can do in Photoshop. So we're not even going to use photographs today. We're just going to work with just this text tool and some effects. So let's go on with it. First of all, let's run down here. We've got just this panel. This is basically where most of your tools are. So we've got the brush tool, stamp tool, eraser, a gradient tool. You can go and investigate these for yourselves. The selection tools tend to be at the top, and then we've got vector tools just down here with the 4 tools down here. We're going to be using the text tool today, so we'll be coming back to that one in a minute. You'll notice that there's these really little arrows down in the corner of some of these tools, and if you click and hold, it gives you options for other kinds of tools that are related to the base tool there. So that gives you some idea about what's going on. There's some more tools down here as well which you can go investigate should you require them. There are hundreds of shortcuts for keyboard shortcuts for the tools inside Photoshop, and if you use Photoshop a lot, you'll start using those. I'm not going to worry about telling you about them today. I just want you to get the basics of the layout and where stuff is for now. Down here at the bottom we've got colours. Okay, so this is the foreground colour and that's the background colour, and if you click on those you can start changing those colours. So it's fairly simple. You can see how that works. There's a representation of the colour selected at the moment up here in the colour tab here, which brings us down nicely to our adjustments and layers. Now in Photoshop there's different layout designs that you can have depending on what you're doing at a time, and it puts the most commonly used windows down at the side panel for you for that action. And you can see there's various different options which you can explore. We're going to leave it on essentials for today. Okay, so at the moment adjustments is minimized, and we might come to that later on. So we've got color, adjustments and mask, and then we've got this layers panel, and the layers panel is probably one of the most important panels that you've got in Photoshop, so leave that open so you can see it. There's a couple more panels here that you could go and have a look at. A history panel and the mini bridge. You don't need to worry about that at the moment. That's about working with photographs. At the top obviously you've got this this main menu which you can go and find objects in. Basically anything that's in here is also in the top menu, and you can go and find it there. And below that is a menu that changes depending on what tool you've got selected. So it gives you basically the options for that tool, or some of the options. Some of them have these folder icons or other icons, which means that you can go in there and find some more options that you can play around with. So let's go straight on with starting this tutorial. So let's go for it. File, new. Inside new, I'm just going to leave the name as it is. I'm going to leave the international paper size. I'm setting that to A4, so that size is worth noting, and then the width and height are sorting themselves out. The resolution I'm leaving at 300 in case I ever want to print this. If I didn't want to print it, I could turn that down quite a lot for the screen resolution, so down to maybe 100 pixels per inch, and that would still be good enough quality for most screen uses. And it means it's going to be a smaller image for me to deal with. The white background, as I say, I'm going to leave that as it is at the moment. The white background can stay as it is. If I was going to be moving this text to a different program, then I might want to change it to transparent so that I haven't got a white background on there. But even if I did, I can delete that white background later on. So I click OK and it's going to start it up. You can see it's made a portrait page. Now actually I want to rotate that by 90 degrees. So inside image I can go to image rotation and change it to by 90 degrees clockwise. So that's image rotation, and I can rotate the canvas by a set amount. You can see the background layer has popped up here, and it's locked layer, and we're going to leave that as it is for now. As soon as I click on the text tool and I choose the horizontal type and I click that on the area, if I click and let go, it's just going to add a cursor for me to start typing. If I click and drag, it will draw a marquee, and then I let go and that will set the marquee, and then I can start typing. You can see the colour the text is going to be here. It's taken the foreground colour from over here, and we can start working our way along here to see if we're happy with what's going to happen. Now as soon as I did that, as soon as I clicked and dragged out that marquee, it made a new layer called layer 1, and it's got a big T there telling me it's a text layer, okay, meaning that the computer knows, or the Photoshop knows, the type that's in there. It's not a picture, it's a type layer. So let's have a look over here. So I'm going to leave this selection of which font I've got chosen at the moment. I'm going to leave that as it is. Leave that as regular. There's no other options for this font. The size 72 can stay the same, and I've got it on smooth at the moment. So that's the how smooth the text is going to look. So let's change that to crisp. Centralize the text. That's fine for my purpose today. And then I'm just going to type in actually something very exciting: text. And I'm going to leave that as it is. Down here I can just actually I can already do a nice warped image, so let's just do that and see what happens. So inside there, just click on that and this warp text comes up, and I can start playing around with different kinds of warped text if I want to. Not a very good choice, so arcing at the bottom, arcing at the top, that's a little bit nicer. Shell the bottom, again, not a great choice with the text and the size of the text box that I've got there. A wave, I wonder if we could increase that a little bit, make it a bit more interesting. I mean, the text is not, there we go, it's twisting it up a little bit there, that's better. So we'll just play around with that. I'm not aiming for anything in particular, I'm just playing, so that'll do for now, and I'll click OK. So I'm happy. I can still type my text. I could type more text if I want to. I can delete text if I want to. I haven't finished that off yet. When I've finished with that, I can just click on the tick button, and that will get rid of that. Now if I want to, I can go back, I can double click, I can get back into it again and make changes. So that doesn't mean that it's the end of being able to edit the text, it just means it's closed it off for now. Now at the moment that text is in totally the wrong place. I want to centralize that and maybe make it a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to go over to this move tool, and you can see that puts these transformation controls around the outside edge. Now that will not appear if this little tick box up here, show transform controls, is not ticked. And when you first start Photoshop for the first time, it is not ticked by default. And it can take people some time to realise that all they need to do is that, and then they can start resizing their image that they've generated. So you can resize, we could rotate it just by hovering around the outside edge, and that allows me to reposition objects as I see fit. Now, I'm going to click tick there. You need to say yes, I'm happy with that distortion once you've done that with the transformation controls, and that sets that in place. So that's a bit of a better size of type for us there. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start having a look at all sorts of different filters and effects and adjustments I can make to the text. So let's start with filter. Now you can have a massive exploration in here. Blur is used quite a lot. So up in filter, this is only at the top here. So up in filter, we've got artistic, we've got blur. There's loads of different options down here that you can go and play around with. If I was going to go through them all, not only would it be boring, but it would take some of the creativity and the fun out about finding about what some of this stuff does. Okay, so I'm going to let you play around with that. But what I'll do is I'll go into artistic now, and we'll just click on the top option there. And it says to me here, the type layer must be rasterized before proceeding. That means it's going to turn it into an image. So it will no longer be a text layer here. The T will disappear. It will turn into something else. Okay. Now, the text will no longer be editable, which means that I can't then go and delete the T or change it or change the type that I've got in there. So I can just click OK there, and that's going to make it, because I'm fairly happy with what's happened. Now, what I can do is I can start going through these. I can see the ones that I want to click on, I can have a play around with, and yeah, there'll be some effects there that I like, and some of them won't seem to do anything depending on what settings are set and how big the image is in this case. So I've just clicked on one there over in this options panel. That actually goes through some of these, but it goes through them in a different order. So I can actually click on one, and if I press the down arrow on the keyboard, I can actually just scroll through a bunch that I like until I can see what effects are happening and whether I like any of those effects, and I can keep going until I get to one I like. In this case, actually, there's one which I think I might use, if I can find it. There it is, stained glass. So I'm going to use that. You can see it's put a kind of broken up pattern across the text, and it's added some light. Now I'm just going to increase that light intensity. So I'm going to play around with that, and the border thickness, let's make that a bit thinner, so it's a bit finer texture. It's just playing around with it a little bit until I'm happy. Increase the cell size, that's better. Okay, and I'm going to click OK. So my text there has now got a funny effect on it. It's already looking a little bit more 3D and a little bit more interesting to look at. I'm going to go straight away, and I'm going to keep editing that text a little bit, but I'm going to zoom in. I can zoom in and out of the image by pressing Control plus and Control minus on the keyboard. And that's the easiest way. It's a shortcut, but it's the easiest way of doing it. So you can see I've zoomed in on the text there, so I can see what's going on. Let's move that centrally. So I'm going to go straight on with adjustments. Now there's a couple of different ways of adding adjustments or effects. Now you've got adjustment layers here, and you can add extra layers which you can then delete and play around with, so brightness and contrast. So I can add that layer on the top, and I can change the brightness and contrast of the image and what's going on in the image. You can see how that's affecting. And because it's a layer, it's applying to everything that's underneath it, which is quite nice. Now I can stop that happening using these buttons down here, and again it's just one of those things, if you're interested and you can go and play around with it. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that now. Right, I'm actually going to delete that adjustment layer because that's not how I want to make any adjustments today. You can if you want to, but that's not what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this FX button down here, okay, to add a layer style to this layer. Now instead of adding a new layer, that just adds an extra node that's attached to that layer. Okay, so in this case, let's just add a drop shadow, and we can start playing. You can see how that adds a bit of a 3D feel to it, and we can play around with this. So I can just click on the drop shadow there, and I can start playing around with the size, the distance of it, the spread. You can see these tools are quite powerful, so I'm quite happy with that. I could also do a bevel and emboss if I wanted to, so that's even increasing that kind of feeling of it jumping out even more. And again, I can play around with this and all these different options in here. I can't go into detail for them all now. You'll start to learn what they do, and the more you do tutorials like this, the more people will explain little bits to you as you go along. So I'm just going to click OK. I'm quite happy with that effect now. Okay, so I've got a nice drop shadow, I've got effect on it, I've done a nice thing with a filter on the text, and I've turned it into an image which is on a transparent background. So if I take this background off, you'll see this checker appear. Now that just means that there's no paper colour, that the paper colour is transparent, there is nothing there. So if I took this text to another program now, like Illustrator or Adobe After Effects, it would keep its, if I choose the right options anyway, it will keep its transparency, and I could layer it on top of some video or some other images. So there we go. I'm going to close off there. That gives you the basic tutorial and some ideas for starting to edit and play around with text in Photoshop. The thing is, you mustn't be scared of it. You just got to go for it and start playing around with stuff and working out what stuff does. And the more you experience it, the faster you'll learn it. I'm going to sign off there. Thank you for listening to Clarity Design, and I'll talk to you soon.